Here we are looking at the left-hand spindle assembly of the Ford 5000. So I've already disassembled the spindle from the extension housing just to kind of see what was going on and why it was doing what it was doing, which is essentially touching the housing. The spindle is touching the housing, which is not ideal. So what we found is that these two pieces are what's left of the original thrust bearing, which is supposed to look like this. Obviously there's quite a difference in size. So this would sit in here underneath the spindle to support the weight of the tractor from touching. Obviously that failed, and what's happened over the years is probably this never got greased. Now I think this is savable. We're just gonna have to do a little machining right here to get rid of this ridge so that this new bearing can fit flush in the housing, which is not a big deal. Also, I've gone ahead and pressed the old bushings out. Now these are cool because it's hard to see on the camera, but these are original Ford bearings. Bushings, rather. And we're going to replace them here. Essentially, these will get pressed in, and that's what's going to make up the whole assembly. So here's the fit now that the bushings are installed and also the thrust bearing is replaced. This is about what it should look like. As you can see, the gap that was created from the parts wearing on each other is quite noticeable, but the shoulder where the bearing sits is still good, so that should be fine. Now this was all caused due to lack of grease. It's amazing the wear and tear that can happen on these parts just from lack of maintenance that could have been easily avoided. So the main reason we're in here taking apart this spindle is because of this right here. There is no thrust bearing left at all, and the spindle has been wearing into this housing, which is not ideal. So we're going to try to take this apart and put new bushings in, new thrust bearing, see if we can't reuse the spindle, just like we did to this side over here. Hopefully parts are good enough to be able to be reused. My goodness. I came out in a hurry. I gotta go find that chisel. Wow. That could have hurt. This would be a good lesson for wearing safety glasses. It's been on there for a day or two. My goodness. There's a whole piece. Tie rod. Right socket. Wow. Works great. Ooh, how much movement we got there. Wow, no grease. All coming out of this thing. Wow. Hey. Golly. Look at the rust coming out of this thing. I'm sure this guy who owned this tractor before me followed strict greasing procedures. Wow. And that's what's left of our bearings. Look at that. Well, we'll see if it can be saved. voice. These are little sleeves that move once that bolt tightens up on them. Sorry about the light, guys. It's right in the window. Sun is coming in strong. Now we're gonna try to loosen this up a little bit. Got a lead hammer here, very heavy. Knocking everything off the tractor too. My goodness, I think we're gonna have to do some figuring here. Axle doesn't want to come out of there. So the reason I'm using a lead hammer on this project is because lead is very heavy and it hits hard. As you can see, it kind of wrecks the hammer when you're using it heavy, but that makes it so it doesn't damage the metal that you're trying to preserve. This lead will bend, whereas the metal soaks up the energy much better. So we've got it this far, and I've been beating and pounding on this thing for the last 20 minutes. Finally got it somewhat loose. Let's see if we can get this out. Looks like it ought to come out, but it's just stuck. My goodness. Looks like some critter had a home in there for a little while. But as you can see, I've been beating right here with that hammer. It hasn't even chipped the metal at all. It's a good way to do it, but it ruins your hammer. So after a lot of work, which I didn't get on video because it was kind of time consuming, finally got these bushings out of this axle extension, and it was a pain. Had to use the torch to heat the bushings up, and they were a monster to get these things out. I ended up having to use, a punch, a pretty good size hammer, and also a lot of heat. I had to heat this whole inner bushing just so I could get that thing to move at all. In the bottom one, I actually had to take a slice out of the bottom one that would have went under here, just so I could get this one to move, because there's no real shoulder to pound the bushing out through. So that was a little bit of a monster. It took me about an hour to do both of those bushings, so didn't really get that on video, but here it is. Now I can start cleaning this up and getting the new bushings pressed in. Just got these bushings all pressed into the proper depth, slightly below the surface. Starting to look pretty good. Got everything all painted up looking good. It's a little bit of time to paint something can go a long ways. That'll look pretty nice when I put it all back together. Didn't take too long. I got new tie rod ends on these. That'll tighten up the front end pretty good. Just going to put a little grease in these bushings here, so whenever I put the spindle in, it won't be completely dry. It'll at least have some grease in there. Awfully stringy grease. Let's open this up, and it's kind of a weird grease, but whatever. Again, I pre-packed my bushing, or excuse me, the thrust bearing. It's going to go on the spindle. Just temporary. Hold this spindle in. A pair of vice grips here. Perfect. Sorry guys, that noise in the background is a salamander heater. It's probably 5 degrees out tonight. I had to run the heater for a little bit. It gets kind of obnoxious after a while. So this is a real quick and easy way to get a toe-in adjustment on this thing. I just took some 2x4s and clamped them to the wheels, and I can get a dimension from the front and back. And I got about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch toe in on the front. I figured that would probably be pretty decent. I got these tie rods all loosened up because I just replaced them. So those are nice and easy to adjust now while it's nice and clean. So I figured I'd do this before I get it all tightened up. That should track pretty good now. Alright, so we've got about 77 1/8 measured at the rear of the tires. See what we got on the front here. And we got right around 76 and 7/8. So we got close to a 1/4 of an inch toe in. It should be just about ideal for this old girl. It's never going to be going down the highway or anything, but that should be just enough to make the tires go nice and true whenever they're under a load. So it should be fine. Another problem with this front end is this right here. When I bought this tractor, this pin that goes in from the front is missing. So I've got a new pin, I've sourced a new pin, and it looks like this. I've also got a thrust washer, which is supposed to go in here to hold the whole assembly forward. So I've got to get that in next. It looks like a little bit of a trick to get it in there, but I have to clean it up best I can and get a little grease on there, and hopefully it'll go in nice. Sorry about the glare here, guys. We're right in the window. Yeah, we got the wrong socket. So where is the right socket? Oh, goodness. Oh, 13, 16. Where are you? Goodness, I put it way over here. All right, let's get rid of that footage.